Salutations and welcome, horse racing fans, to another episode of Amalfi Sports. I'm your host, Matthew DeSantis, and today we're previewing the races for the final Saturday at Saratoga. That's right, this all-important meet is nearly over, but not before some great races over the Labor Day weekend. However, before we get to that, I just want to remind everyone that in the coming weeks, you should be on the lookout on the podcast platform of your choice for the new Win, Place, Show podcast, which is going to be my podcast that you can get anywhere on all of the different platforms. And we're going to continue to do these weekly previews, not just at Saratoga, because obviously that season's finishing up. Del Mar, that season's finishing up. We're going to move to new places, folks. We're going to go to Belmont. We're going to go to Keeneland. We're going to go to Kentucky Downs. We're going to go all over the country and follow these races as we move to the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar in November. So we're going to continue to have those. We're also going to have interviews with people from across the horse racing industry. And then there are also going to be some podcast-only episodes that are going to be maybe race recaps in some instances, or maybe even just smaller quick kind of flash podcasts about one or two races on some of the smaller tracks that might still be running. So we're going to have a lot of great content. If you've been consuming our stuff on YouTube, wonderful. It's going to continue to be there. Thank you for all of the support. We see those numbers are continuing to grow every week, so thank you. And those previews and the interviews are still going to be available on YouTube, but you're going to be able to also get them on podcasts. And sometimes that's just more convenient as you're traveling around the country on a weekend like the one coming up for Labor Day, if you're driving the kids to school, driving to work, things like that. So just make it a little bit more convenient for you to get your horse racing coverage at the Win, Place, Show podcast. Now, that said, I want to make sure if you stay up to date with all the daily activity of horse racing, make sure to follow me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace. We have a lot of great content, and I have some giveaways coming up. I think the Pennsylvania Derby might be the next time I have a giveaway, so that's coming up at the end of September. It should be a great race in southeastern Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up, so looking forward to that a lot. Now, finally, Saratoga isn't the only track wrapping things up this weekend. Del Mar out in California is also finishing up, and I have a preview and picks for the big Saturday out there, which are highlighted by a pair of Grade 2 races, the John C. Mabie Stakes and the Del Mar Derby. So make sure to go to amalfimedia.com or the Amalfi Media YouTube channel to get those picks and previews for those races. And as always, can't go wrong for horse racing coverage at amalfimedia.com. Now, make sure to like and comment with your thoughts about how you think these races at Saratoga are going to break down this weekend, and share with your fellow horse racing enthusiasts and fanatics on social media. Okay, well, we have 4 graded stakes races to dive into at Saratoga on Saturday, so let's not waste any more time and get straight into them. And let's start with the 5th race on the card, which is the Grade 2 Prioress Stakes for 3-year-old fillies on dirt. That's 6 furlongs. And let's take a look at this field. And what you'll notice is this is a relatively small field. And guess what? That's true for most of the stakes races at Saratoga on Saturday. You're really only going to see 6 or 7 horse fields, which I actually kind of like a little bit. So this Prioress Stakes field, let's start with the number 1 hole, Oksana, trained by Timothy Hills and jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. And then a horse with a nifty little name, Edie Meeny Miny Mo, trained by Miguel Vera and jockeyed by Victor Espinoza. In the number 3 hole, Lil Tootsie, trained by Thomas Amos and jockeyed by Dylan Davis. And then Scylla, trained by Charlton Baker and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffleone. And then a number 5 hole, you have Amendment 19, trained by Brad Cox and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. And then finally, in the 6th hole, you have the morning line favorite, Super Sensational, trained by Mark Cassie and jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. So let's talk about these 6 horses. And let's start right with the 1 hole, Oksana. And this is my kind of horse. This is a horse that started out on turf. This is not a turf horse. moved to dirt, and is 2 for 2 on dirt, and has won by, get ready, a total of 28 lengths. 2 races, 2 wins by 28 total lengths. Holy crap. This is a horse that has very strong workouts. And part of the reason I like this horse is it's a Pennsylvania bred horse. As I mentioned, I'm originally from southeastern Pennsylvania, so it's hard for me not to root for that. And this is a horse that has good but not spectacular pedigree. And so to see a horse like Oksana, start to do as well as she is, I think just really exciting. And like I said, had that one turf race to start off her career, didn't take well to the turf, has moved to dirt, and has just been obliterating fields. Now, granted, these are not overwhelming. These are maiden special weight, $34,000, allowance claimers, at $58,000. So this is a huge step up in competition, no doubt about it. But this is a horse that can run a big number and has got some speed. And more importantly, this is a horse that doesn't just run a big number at a slow pace. This horse can push a pace and can run. And so I really like Oksana quite a lot. I think at the value at 3-1, compared to 6-5, super sensational, I like the value of Oksana a lot more. So this is a horse I like quite a bit. And this fits the profile of the type of horse I like. Lightly raced, improving speed numbers, has blown out lower level competition, likes this distance of 6 furlongs, has gone 6.5, has gone 6. So likes this. I like Oksana for that value. Let's talk a little bit about Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo. This is a horse that's going down in distance and class to some extent. Went up in distance to 1.16 miles last time out. That was too much. Went up in class too. It was a grade 3 race. And just, if you're going to go up in class, don't go up in distance. And this is a horse that went up in both. And that's I don't like that recipe. I don't mind a step up in class, obviously, if you're comfortable with the distance, or vice versa. If you're kind of just stepping up in distance, then stay at the same class, or maybe even drop back a little bit. So this is a horse that's taking, is coming down a little bit in terms of length of the race and distance. That's a good thing. Was 2 for 2 prior to that, won the previous 2 races, and has good workouts. This horse might be best trailing. The problem is Oksana is a front runner, and she's going to set the pace. And like I said, she can run. And so I just worry that Oksana is going to blaze the field. And I just, maybe not the field, but I just think a horse like Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, it's just maybe doesn't quite have the class to keep up with the pace that Oksana is going to set. And so, at 9-2, I don't really like the odds on Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo for that reason. So let's talk a little bit about Little Tootsie. It's a horse that may not look like much, but does well at this distance, and which is 6 furlongs. And this is a horse that, Tom Amos, I know, he's a great guy. Everybody loves him. He does a great job covering horse racing on America's Day at the Races on FS1 and FS2 occasionally. I enjoy his coverage. I don't know what he's been doing with this horse. This horse has been all over the place in terms of 5 furlongs to 1.16 miles and everything in between. We're changing surfaces, we're changing distances. I feel like this horse is pretty good at 6 furlongs. And this horse is now running at 6 furlongs, runs competitively at 6 furlongs. I don't understand when trainers do that. I understand there's more money sometimes at those longer races and bigger, more showcase distances. But if you have a great horse that's just good at 6 furlongs, let them be good at 6 furlongs. I just don't understand this desire to try to stretch every horse out. And so I don't love that. That said, I like the horse actually quite a bit, and particularly at 12-1. I like the horse. So I think the horse provides good value on the back end of exotics. So no reason to stay away from Little Tootsie, because I think at this distance, she offers good value. Now, Sela is an interesting horse. I think this horse may prefer the slop, which may not be the worst thing, because Saratoga has been drenched, obviously, with Hurricane Ida. And obviously, we're hoping everybody's okay. And if you and your family have been impacted, please obviously reach out to the necessary resources with the Red Cross, with FEMA, et cetera. And certainly hoping for a swift recovery. But this is a horse, like I said, may prefer the slop. Now, the thing is, if this horse was running on Thursday at Saratoga, that's one thing. But by Saturday, the track's going to be dried out a little bit. It still may not be super dry, but it's going to be a lot drier. And I just don't think it's not going to be sloppy because it's going to be sunny in Saratoga on Thursday and Friday and Saturday. This is a horse that's good at 6 furlongs, but slow compared to when you look at the other horses in the field. This is a horse that wins 6 furlong races at a minute 12. Problem is, if you look at other horses in the field, they're winning 6 furlong races at a minute and 9. So 112 versus 109, this horse is going to have to get a lot faster at 6 furlongs to win, because I don't see 112 in terms of a time winning this race at all, especially with Oksana setting that early pace. So, like I said, I think Sela is a horse that's in a little bit of trouble there. Amendment 19, this is a horse with good pedigree, moved from Linda Rice to Brad Cox. This is the first race under Brad Cox. You got to obviously be aware of that. That said, I don't love the recent workouts this horse has turned in. This horse is very versatile, has won on a lot of different conditions, muddy, sloppy, fast. So it's very versatile. No matter what the surface is at Saratoga on Saturday, this horse is going to have a shot. I actually think Amendment 19 might be a horse that stretches out a little bit more. It seems like the horse performs a little bit better with more distance. I think 6 furlongs in the pace might be a little too much. And then finally, let's talk about the morning line favorite, Super Sensational. Very consistent horse, 5 consecutive graded stakes races before this one. Is a step back in distance. I do generally like horses that are doing that. This horse competes well, but weakens at a longer distance. Has had some blistering workouts back in June at the 5 furlong distance. This horse that likes to sit off the pace and then push and make that stretch run. So this is an interesting race to handicap. Will the inside rail with the conditions be a factor? We saw that happen a little bit on Thursday, where the inside rail was kind of dead and the inside position was actually kind of dead, and you wanted to be a little bit further out on the track. And so it'll be interesting if Oksana's breaking from that one hole. Is that still happening on Saturday? So how do I see this race playing out? Well, I'm going to chase some value here, and I'm going to have Oksana to win. I think Super Sensational might be the best overall horse in the field, but I like Oksana to win. I like Super Sensational to come on and make it close late. I like Eeny, Meeny, Mighty Mo to finish in the money, and I like Little Tootsie to round out your superfectas. So I have it 1, 6, 2, 3. Oksana, Super Sensational, Eeny, Meeny, Mighty Mo, and Little Tootsie. All right, now let's move on to the 8th race, which is the Saranac Stakes, which is a grade 2 race for 3-year-olds on the inner turf. Let's take a look at that field for the Saranac Stakes. Like I said, 1.16 miles on turf for 3-year-olds. This is another 6-horse field. And I should point out there is a 7th horse in this field, which is a main track only horse. I know that Saratoga was off the turf on Thursday. I would imagine they will be lightly raced on the turf on Friday, but with the crystal clear conditions between now and Saturday, I don't anticipate any of these races that are turf being off on Saturday. So for that, we're just going to look at the 6 horses that are definitely going to be racing on the turf on Saturday. And we'll start with the morning line favorite, Public Sector, trained by Chad Brown and jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Like the King, trained by Wesley Ward and jockeyed by John Velasquez. He's Pure Gold, trained by Kelly Breen and jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. Never Surprise, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Luis Saez. Founder, second Chad Brown horse, jockeyed by Irad's brother, Jose Ortiz. And then finally Mose, trained by Patrick McBurney and jockeyed by Tyler Gaffalione. So let's talk a little bit about each of these horses. Public Sector, you have to take into consideration the Brown-Ortiz connection, although that has not been paying off that much this year. Irad, I feel, has had very questionable rides at times throughout the year, and the return on investment has not been great for this combination of Brown and Ortiz. Speed figures for public sector have been consistent and even slight improvements. So I like to see that. Distance will not be an issue for this horse, but the ride might be. Public sector is a horse that always seems to come up just short late. And I don't think it's the problem with the horse. And if there is a problem with the horse, it's just that it takes a while to get to top end speed. Maybe this is not a horse that maybe has a spectacular burst, but needs to kind of get moved a little sooner in the race so it can reach top speed by the time we get to the finish line. The workouts have been erratic. And like I said, if you look at this horse in past performances, this is a horse that's always driving. This is a horse that's always coming up just short late. This is a horse that's always almost, it's making up ground. Doesn't quite get there though. And so I'm just worried about Irad Ortiz Jr. And this is a complete 180 for me because I absolutely love Irad Ortiz Jr. I think he's a great jockey. I think he's incredibly skilled. I think sometimes he can give mind-numbing rides at Saratoga where he sits off the pace. And I just don't understand it. And I just don't know if he's going to move public sector soon enough. And if he waits too long, I just think this horse, it just may not get the best ride. And it's unfortunate because this horse has struggled with good rides. And I don't think it's the horse's fault necessarily. So we'll see. Like the King, this is interesting. A Derby horse that's moved to the turf, finished second, but beat a horse, Wooten Asset. And Wooten Asset just won the Virginia Derby on Tuesday. So, granted, that's not an overwhelming race. It's a grade 3 race, but it's nothing to sneeze at. But, beat a horse that just won a grade 3 at Virginia at Colonial Downs. This horse that runs well on a soft surface. By all accounts, the condition of the turf right now, Thursday night as I'm recording this, Friday as you're listening to this, has been the turf is good, soft in spots. Presumably with no rain and continued maintenance, it's going to get up to good. And we're probably not going to have too soft. But still, it's important that this horse does like a soft surface. Has had some really fast workouts at Keeneland, but that can be very deceiving because everybody has fast workouts at Keeneland. So, like the King's a good horse, but I don't necessarily like him to finish in the money. He's Pure Gold. This is a horse that is a closer, improving numbers and workouts, but this is a step up in class, and this is a horse that would need a huge jump in terms of speed numbers to win and really even get on the board, I think. So he's Pure Gold. There's a reason that he's 15-1 in this particular. And I like to chase value as much as the next person. I just don't see it in this particular race. I think there's actually better value in other places. Now let's move to Never Surprised. This is a horse that can do the distance. And more importantly, this is a horse that's jockeyed by Luis Saez. And I trust Luis Saez. Luis Saez had a hell of a week last week because I was at Charlestown in West Virginia, and Luis Saez flew in from Saratoga to race Art Collector in the Charlestown Classic. And Art Collector and Luis Saez, Art Collector won that race with ease, but Luis Saez gave Art Collector the perfect ride. And, he flew in and knew exactly what to do on that track. Flew back and won, and won with essential quality the next day at the Travers. So Louis having a good week, and Louis can give horses a great ride. And so I like for Louis to give Never Surprised the right type of ride. Interestingly enough, I actually think Irad had ridden this horse before and really held her back too much. This is a horse that I actually think, Irad kind of hindered a little bit. And so I think Louis is going to give Never Surprised the exact right type of ride that he needs. And this is a horse that can run on a good surface. So it's not a concern if it's a little soft or a little off from firm. So then there's Founder. This is a good horse that's transitioning to turf and seems to be slowly taking to it. I actually like that. This would be, it would be another jump for him to compete. But I like for Founder to hit the board. I really do. This is a horse that's run in big races, ran in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Futurity last year, so won't be overwhelmed by the moment. Deep closers do concern me in that this is a horse that ran into a very strong pace last time out. I don't know if this pace will be quite as strong. So I do wonder a little bit whether or not Founder will be able to make up that ground. But in this small of a field, it won't be that far back, so it won't be a ton of ground to make up. So I don't think it's quite as concerning. And then finally, Mose. This is a step up in class and ran one race where he might be competitive, but otherwise was a non-factor. So it's interesting. But at 12 to 1, there might be some value there. So I think that'll be something to keep in mind. So how do I see the Saranac Stakes playing out? Well, I have it 4, 5, 1, 6. So I have Never Surprised to win. I have Founder to place. I have Public Sector to show, and I have Mose to finish 4th. Again, chasing a little bit of value here. I just think Never Surprised, even though it's 8 to 5, I think I like that horse more, and I like Luis Saez more in this race than I Rat Ortiz. And then Founder, again, at 4 to 1, you're just adding a little bit more value on that exotic bet. And so, again, chasing a little bit of value and going against the favorite in this particular race. So let's transition to the Flower Bowl Stakes, which is the 11th race on the card. And let's take a look at that field. And that is 1 3/8 on turf for 4-year-olds and up who are fillies and mares. This is a 7-horse field. And let's run through them. In the number 1 post, you have La Signari, trained by Brendan Walsh and jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. In the number 2 hole, you have American Bridge, trained by Jean-Claude Rouget and jockeyed by Rat Ortiz Jr. Then you have Warlike Goddess, the morning line favorite at 4 to 5, trained by Bill Mott and jockeyed by Julien Leparoux. Then you have My Sister Nat, another French horse, trained by Chad Brown and jockeyed by Jose Ortiz. Lovely Lucky, trained by Thomas Albertrani and jockeyed by John Velasquez. In the 6th hole, you have Great Island, trained by Chad Brown, jockeyed by Joel Rosario. And then finally, Costana, trained by Cherie DeVoe and jockeyed by Luis Saez. And so how do I see the Flower Bowl playing out? Well, I really like La Signari. This is a horse I like quite a bit. Ran a great race at the Diana and keeps running improving numbers. And I don't think any of the horses in this field are as good as the 2 horses she lost to last time, Althika and Summer Romance. I think those 2 horses are better than any other horse in this field, including Warlike Goddess. So if you're looking at it from a standpoint of value, I like La Signari at 4 to 1, or 5 to 1, I should say, morning line in particular. It's a horse that just seems to keep getting better incrementally. And I trust that. And I'll explain that in a second. What I trust about it is I like horses that are, especially more established horses, and these are horses that are a little bit more veteran, that are going from 90 to 92, 92 to 94, 94 to 96, 96 to 98. I trust that. What I don't trust is a horse that goes from 88 to 102. And you go, oh, wow, this horse can run a 102. Yeah, the horse is probably going to go back to running an 88. I like this sort of incremental improvement that I've been seeing from La Signari this year. So I do like this horse going up in distance. That might be an issue. And I don't love the fact, typically when you're going up in distance, I like to see horses that are getting pushed in workouts a little bit, going 5, maybe even 6 furlongs. This is a horse that's just been training at 4 furlongs. So I understand why La Signari is 5 to 1, but I do think there's value there. American Bridge, this is a horse making its American debut. Distance will not be an issue. Surface might actually be an advantage if it's a little bit softer. Now, that said, it has not faced amazing competition over in Europe. I think people who've been following a lot of turf races have seen a lot of European horses come over and dominate the American turf fields. And I think because of that, American Bridge might get bet down because people are just kind of used to seeing horses like Althika and Summer Romance and Santa Barbara and Bolshoi Ballet come over and win impressively in various high grade 1 stakes races on the turf. American Bridge doesn't have that same pedigree. I think this is a horse that might take a little bit of time to adjust to the United States. And like I said, has not faced the level of competition that you saw some of those other horses I mentioned face when they were over there. So let's talk a little bit about Warlike Goddess, the morning line favorite. This is a horse that's 5 for 6 in her career. This is a horse that's a deep closer. This is a horse that can run a big number. I actually think the small field might help because as a deep closer, you're not going to have as many horses to weave through. Now, what's interesting is there's no clear speed in this race. There's no kind of rabbit, so to speak. And that actually might hurt Warlike Goddess because as a deep closer, you like for there to be a fast pace so you could run into that fast pace. Without that fast pace, everybody's going to have something a little left in the tank. A horse like La Signari that likes to sit in that 3 or 4 slot and will probably sit third in this race, maybe even second. If you're not setting a crazy blistering fraction, suddenly La Signari's got a lot more left in the tank at 1 3/8. All of these horses do. So, My Sister Nat, who I'm going to talk about next, is going to have plenty left. So I do worry a little bit in that regard about Warlike Goddess, but this is a really good horse. And this is a horse that, again, 5 for 6 in the career and can run a huge number. And so if this horse runs her race, I think she's the favorite for a reason. You're not going to get a ton of value there, but I do like this horse quite a bit. My Sister Nat, an incredibly consistent horse, but just is not winning anymore. This is a horse that seems to just be finishing third and fourth pretty consistently. It is a competitive horse, is a good horse, but you're just not seeing this horse race at the high end. And so at 5-1, I like La Signari a lot more at 5-1 than I do My Sister Nat. So that's just kind of where I see it. The one thing you do know about My Sister Nat, distance will not be an issue. And this is a horse that does like the turf at Saratoga. Her best runs in recent years have been at Saratoga on this turf. So if you're looking for a reason to maybe put My Sister Nat in some exotics, that's the reason. Personally, I just think very consistent horse, but just is not finishing up in the money very high lately. So again, this is a horse that reminds me a little bit, a totally different type of horse, but in terms of where it's going to finish, reminds me a little bit of Whitmore from last week, a horse that just isn't really finishing in the top 1 or 2 anymore, but is running competitively in the top 3 or 4. So then Lovely Lucky, this is a horse that took a step back to win last time out. This is the possible speed in the field. But that said, Lovely Lucky is not going to blister the field, not going to try to run some crazy pace. Clearly is a cut below the other horses in the field. Now that said, came off a huge layoff before winning this last race, so you might see a slight improvement. I think that only means that Lovely Lucky might be a factor later into the race than she might be otherwise, but I think she'll fade at some point, and the class of the field will come up. Great Island, this is another Chad Brown horse, improving figures, although in terms of speed, which is something I always like to see. This is a horse that's stepping up in distance and class. As I've mentioned before, I don't love that. I like if you do one or the other, but not both. Now that said, Chad Brown, I think, might finally get her going the right direction. I think she's getting the right type of rides finally, which I think is really important. So that's something to keep in mind with Great Island, that, I think she's, that Chad's finally kind of gotten her pointed in the right direction, because you've seen some pretty marked improvement the last couple of times out. But again, taking a step down to grade 3 the last 2 times, with a third and then a close victory last time out, the matchmaker. So again, we'll see kind of what happens in this particular field, but at 4-1, I don't necessarily love the odds there. But certainly a very capable horse. And I think a very competitive horse for this particular field. And then finally, Castana, great pedigree, but would need massive improvement to even hit the board. So if you're going to fade one horse, I think Costana is the horse to fade. And at 15-1, I think the odds reflect that. It doesn't look like huge odds, but in a small field, you're never going to get huge odds in a lot of cases. So how do I see the Flower Bowl playing out? Well, I have it 3, 1, 2, 4. I have Warlike Goddess to win, La Signori to place, American Bridge to show, and My Sister Nat to finish 4th. I think I really like the favorite here, Warlike Goddess, but I like La Signori and American Bridge to give you a lot of value on those exotic bets. And if you're looking for value, that's where I would look for it, is those two horses. So let's finally move to the last race in the card, and the last race that we'll preview today, and that is, of course, the Jockey Club Cup Gold Stakes. And let's take a look at that field for the Jockey Club Gold Cup Stakes. And this is 1.25 miles on dirt for 3-year-olds and up, and another 6-horse field with the number 1 hole, Forza de Oro, trained by Bill Mott, jockeyed by Junior Alvarado. And then you have Max Player, trained by Steve Asmussen, jockeyed by Ricardo Santana Jr. Then you have Chess Chief, I should say, trained by Dallas Stewart, jockeyed by Luis Saez. Happy Saver, trained by Todd Pletcher and jockeyed by Irad Ortiz Jr. Night Ops, trained by Brad Cox and jockeyed by Manny Franco. And then finally, Forewarned, trained by Uriah St. Louis and jockeyed by Sonny Leone. And so let's talk about this field. So Forza de Oro. This is a step up. Has only had 2 graded stakes races ever. It's a step up in distance too. This is a horse that can run very, very well. I hate the odds on this horse. 6-1, I just don't see it. Additionally, Bill Mott and Junior Alvarado have not just been crushing Saratoga. I mean, neither of them have been dominant. And, you know, I like Bill Mott a lot. I think he's a great trainer. But the reality is that, you know, he's been winning 15% of his mounts, or 15% of his horses this time out, only had 13 wins. Junior Alvarado's only won 7% of his races, 7 out of 97. I just don't love those odds. And Forza de Oro, like I said, is taking a step up. This is a horse that has run 1 mile and a 16th or 1 mile and an eighth. Now it's going 1 mile and a quarter. That's a big change. Obviously, like I said, can run a huge number, but I just don't love that distance change, and the connections just have not been having quite the overwhelming meet. So let's talk about where I might like to see a little bit of value, and not a ton, but this is where I like it, is Max Player. This is a horse that can do the distance. Now, that said, this is a horse that might prefer slop. It's 2 for 2 on sloppier, muddy surface. But this is a horse that's got a lot of graded stakes experience. This is a horse that's a closer. But what's interesting is Ricardo might have learned something last time out. Because of the sloppy conditions, Ricardo placed her much closer to the lead last time out at 1 mile and a quarter, and was more of that pace setting, right off, stalking position. And Max Player responded beautifully. And I just have a feeling that he's going to try to give her a very similar ride this time, where Max Player is not going to fade all the way back and is going to be sitting there in that 2 or 3 hole this time around. I think that's a much smarter position to put that horse in to really get the best results out. So then Chess Chief, this is a horse that's got good pedigree and has run against some excellent competition, has gone up against Max Field and Warriors Charge. But that said, took a step back to a non-graded stakes race last time out and finished 4th. And it was at Colonial. I was there that day, actually, for that race, and was just not a factor. It was non-competitive. And now he's taking a step back up. I just don't love it. And, obviously 15-1 reflects that, but, people are going to try to chase those types of numbers sometimes. I just don't see it with Chess Chief. Happy Saver. Now let's talk a little bit about this horse. I like this horse quite a bit too. This is a horse 5 for 6 in his career. got beat by Max Player last time out, but you might go, well, that was on the slop. That was in muddy, sloppy conditions. Horse doesn't like that. So do you just discount that and go, well, it was one-off on bad conditions, has had very nice workouts, and won this race last year. So can do the distance. That's not an issue. Is accustomed to this level of competition. So again, happy saver. There's something to like there. Night Ops. This is a horse that's improving. It's interesting. This is a horse last time out lost to Art Collector, who, as I mentioned, just crushed the competition in the Charlestown Classic. Problem with Night Ops is finished second the last 4 times out. I talked about this at my Del Mar preview. I am very wary of horses that always come in second. At Del Mar this weekend, there's a horse, Dog Tag, that always seems to come in second. And there's always one excuse or another for why the horse comes in second, but the horse always comes in second. Night Ops seems to also do this as well. So again, I don't love the value for this horse to win, but I do like the value on exotics. Obviously, I think this horse is going to hit the board because that's what this horse does. Can go up against really strong competition and does well. So I like the odds there with Night Ops. And finally, I'll say Forewarned, 50-1. That number should actually come down. I don't think the horse is a 50-1 horse. I think it's more of a 30-1 or maybe even a 25-1. But this horse really probably is a non-factor in this field. So I do think this is probably more of a 5-horse race and probably even more of a 3-horse race. So how do I see the Jockey Club Gold Cup breaking down? Well, I have it 2, 4, 5, 1. I got Max Player to win. I have Happy Saver to place. I have Night Ops to show. And I have Forza de Oro to finish 4th. I think the distance is just going to be too much. So that's the way I see it. Again, chasing value in some places here, trying to find some value in the margins. And I think there's Warlike Goddess, like I said, is a worthy front runner and morning line favorite. I think the other morning line favorites are a little weak in this Saturday's card, so I think there's value to be found. Well, that's it for today. And I hope you enjoyed the preview for the final Saturday at Saratoga. And remember to check out my blog for my picks for all of the races on Saturday's card at Saratoga, and also my picks and previews for the Saturday races at Del Mar. And the only place to get those is, of course, amalfimedia.com. Finally, just a reminder to subscribe to Amalfi Media on YouTube. Be on the lookout for the next couple of weeks for the launch of the Win Place Show podcast. Follow me on Twitter at the handle @FailedToMenace, and check out amalfimedia.com for all of the great horse racing content you need to get through the Breeders' Cup and beyond. Until next time, folks, I'm Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.